Denim Couch Podcast. Ooh, whoa, ooh, whoa.
The 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s with Steph with an F.
Hi guys, welcome to the Denim Couch Podcast, where we chill on this denim couch and talk about the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. I'm Stephanie Tanner. Welcome. Hey guys, it's Stephanie Tanner with the Denim Couch Podcast, and this week's episode is with Shana Withee. And I haven't spoken to Shana in a very long time, so this was such a pleasure to be able to interview her and catch up and see what her life was like back in the 80s. And she had some incredible stories. I love that she grew up in Montana. I love Montana. It is probably, in my opinion, the most beautiful state ever. I went to Glacier National Park and drove through a bunch of cities in Montana in college, and I love it. I would live there someday. It's very far away from my family, but I just think it's the most beautiful place ever. So she tells us a lot about Montana and the activities and fun times that they had as teenagers and young adults. And she did a bit of traveling. And anyways, I'll just dive right into the episode because it's awesome. This is the last interview for now of the Denim Couch Podcast. This is episode 38. I will do an 80s recap episode for you, and it's bittersweet to have this be my last interview for now. And Shauna's interview was so fun. I think she summed up her interview with what I would like to leave you guys with as well. And so here we go. Let's dive in. How common was your name in the 80s?
Very uncommon. My name is still very uncommon. My name is Shana, and it's spelled Shana, which, if you came from the Gaelic countries, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, they would say, oh yes, your name's spelled correctly. But in America, everybody looks at it, Shana, Shona, where's the U, where's the W? And in that regards, I've never met another Shana spelled the way I spell my name. So it was very, very uncommon at that point in time.
What was life like in the 80s?
Well, I think more than the 80s, I think it was the time in my life. I was in my 20s. I was single. I was going to college. I was starting my career. I did a lot of traveling around the world. And so it was a very exciting time. The whole world was available. It seemed like I wasn't place bound to any place. I could go anywhere. I could do anything. It was just myself. I didn't even have a pet at the time. In the late 80s, I got a couple of turtles, and then I got a dog. But, it was just very, very much me, and I could go and do anything or go anywhere I wanted. And so I did. I'd go fishing a couple of states away for the weekend, or I'd go to lots of concerts, music concert, theater productions, all that kind of thing, because it was just myself, and it was a very exciting time in my life to be young and single and have all those possibilities in front of you to look forward to and to experience. I remember some of the concerts very well. I grew up in northern Montana on a ranch, and so I was very much into my cowboy stage. I had 22 pairs of cowboy boots in every color and style. Then if I didn't have on cowboy boots, I had on Birkenstocks or flip-flops because I was a lifeguard. So, it was like I either had cowboy attire or a swimsuit and flip-flops. So Charlie Daniels, I saw him like 3 times in the early 80s. I saw Crystal Gale. She's one of my favorite country singers. I saw Randy Travis, the Oak Ridge Boys a couple of times, the Statler Brothers, the Righteous Brothers, Kenny Rogers, Helen Reddy, Cher. Anybody that would come that was in driving distance, we'd get in the car and we'd go for the weekend and go watch them. And then lots of local bands and, at fair venues and rodeo venues. We'd go and watch the concerts, and that was a big fun thing to do as a young adult.
What did you do for fun in the 80s?
I remember we would drag Maine, and so you would go from one end of town to the other, and the little community I grew up in was like 3 blocks. So it was like you saw all your friends and you'd honk and wave. But I remember going to school in Utah and taking my cousins to drag Maine in Ogden, Utah, which was, big 30 blocks or something. It was a big long strip, and you saw all the people and honk and wave and, shine your car up so it was all pretty, or get your pickup all washed and clean and drag Maine, and then go out and have a drink. You always had a Coke, no matter what the flavor was. I like grape soda, I like Sprite, but it was always called the Coke. We'd go have a Coke at the local drive-in. A&W, you'd get root beer, but it'd be like, you want a Coke? I'll buy tonight. And so we'd go to the A&W and have root beer in their glass mugs. The town I grew up in had a soda jerk, so it had the fountain with the handle. You could get a Green River, which was a green kind of lemon lime syrup with the fizzy 7-Up type seltzer in it, or you could get a cherry Coke or a vanilla Coke. And it was all done with syrups and then pumping the carbonation into it. And when I go home, I still go to the old marble top soda fountain in the drugstore and have a Coke of whatever color or flavor, because they still have the fountain drinks with the syrup and the seltzer water that they mix. So, you go back and it's like stepping back in time into the 50s or something.
What were some popular activities?
Things I can remember is that in college we'd always go out for pizza or order pizza in and watch movies, in the TV room. It was before Netflix, or we'd have to, even before videos, but there would be, maybe The Sound of Music was coming on, or it was a big deal to order in pizza and watch a movie on the TV in the lounge at the dorm when I was going to college, or go to some friend's house and do that. I'd go to friends' houses, or we'd go up in the mountains and have a campfire and roast marshmallows and make s'mores and hang around the campfire and just visit. That was a fun thing to do at that point in time. I spent a lot of nights doing night swims, as a lifeguard. It seems like I remember lots of nights being at the night swim till 9:30 when you got the pool locked up, and then heading home and calling it an early evening. It wasn't a very exciting nightlife type thing, but just doing fun things with my family and friends is what I remember. And those are the things I still like to do today. A drive around the neighborhood and look at the flowers that people have in their yards is fun, or see how much snow's piled up in the parking lots. Wow. Simple pleasures, just being with the people you love and the people that you're close to, and enjoying the day-to-day parts of life.
Do you have any favorite memories from the 80s?
Oh, I think it has to be with the traveling that I did. I went to Europe a couple of times. I went to Japan a couple of times. I spent 2.5 years in Thailand on a grant from USAID doing rural development work, public health work, and nutrition work with the people of Thailand. And all the different places I traveled, I remember the thing that always clicked with me was that although we may talk different and we may dress differently and we may have different foods that we eat, we're still the same. We want to treat each other nicely. We hope to do better than we did the day before. The whole part that we're all part of this world, and that we need to treat each other as humans and with kindness is the thing that I can remember. I remember I was in Bern, Switzerland, and I was meeting a 4-H friend from Montana, and he had been there about 6 months, and we kept missing each other in the train station. And when we finally found each other, he said, "You just look like a European. I didn't realize. I said, what did you expect me to look like? Some hick from Montana?" And he goes, maybe some rude American. He goes, "But you were just, smiling at the little kids, helping the old lady with her luggage. She said, you just look like a normal person. And I said, that's the biggest compliment you can give me, is that I look like I belong because I was part of the community that was there at that point in time. So, and spent time in Tokyo with a host sibling that had stayed at our home when I was 12. And so I went back as a 18-year-old, I guess I was 17. And that was fun. Just great opportunity to go to Japan. And then on my way home from Thailand in my mid-20s, I stopped again and spent a couple of weeks with the same host family in Japan, in Tokyo, and got to see them as adults, and that was fun too. We had a great time, and have continued that friendship for over 50 years. Brings me great joy, when we exchange cards or emails and share photos. Now it's so easy with Facebook and Instagram. I can see their photos right away, and they can see what I'm doing. And my good friend that lives in Switzerland, the same thing. I could say, "Oh my gosh, your geraniums are so beautiful this year," and she could say, "What happened to yours?" I'm like, "The deer ate them." It's interesting, like in Switzerland, she has to plant red geraniums because the government dictates. She lives in a traditional Swiss chalet in the mountains, and like Heidi movie kind of thing. And so she has to have red geraniums in her flower boxes, and she has to have certain plants planted along the driveway. So when she sees mine and they're all bright hot pink and purple, she's like, "Oh, I'd love to have purple flowers in my front yard." And I'm like, that's interesting that the government dictates what kind of flowers you have to plant in your yard. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And the other thing is that she has children the same age as my children, and when my children all bought their homes a couple of years ago, her kids, you have to pay cash for the total amount of your house when you buy it in Switzerland. So in America, you put down a deposit, pay for it for 30 or 20 or 15 years, however long.
Yeah.
But in Switzerland, you have to pay the total price of the house when you buy it. And so, the fact that my 4 children all bought homes the same summer, totally amazing. I mean, we were really proud of them as parents. But then talking with Frenny, and she's like, "My kids are college educated and they're working in jobs, but they'll be lucky if when they're 50, they have enough money saved up to buy a home." Just a different way we go about living our lives, just according to what the culture is we grow up in. So,
what was the fashion like back in the 80s?
Oh my word, we had big hair. Big hair. I could remember that it was layered and lots of hairspray and big hair. And, I can remember getting out of the pool and then standing upside down or, putting your head down between your ankles and blow drying your hair upside down so that when you stood up, you had big, massive hair on your head. And that's the thing I remember the most. Big shoulder pads. I was working on a degree in economics, so I wore a lot of business suits with big shoulder pads. And then the evening or relaxation attire would be, if I was going out in the evening, I'd put on Rocky jeans, which were very high-waisted, very, very tight. I had them dry clean, so they would stay blue with a crease down the front of my blue jeans. Some silky shirt with big shoulder pads. And, my big hair and big silver jewelry. I've always loved the native style turquoise jewelry, and a lot of it that I've picked up around the world. And so I always had, lots of silver jewelry and big hair. And that's funny now to think about it, that how we'd spend hours blow drying our hair upside down to get it.
What made you happy back then?
Oh, I think the same thing that brings me happiness now, being with friends and family, doing things I enjoy, sharing a meal with friends, spending time being creative, whether it's knitting or quilting or writing in my journal or taking photographs, the creativeness of exploring new things and being able to have something, being of service to others, helping others out, whether it's the elderly lady at the grocery store, helping her get her groceries in her car, or, taking a meal to a sick friend, or a phone call, especially during these COVID times. I think I've spent a lot of time on the phone calling friends and family just to check with them, to see how they're doing. That brings me great joy because I do like people and I like to associate with them.
Were you ever scared, unhappy, or anxious?
Oh, I think at that time in my life when I was going to college, you get those fears like, is this the career for me? Should I really date this person? Am I ever going to find somebody to share the rest of my life with? Should I get a dog? Should I not get a dog? Should I buy a car? Should I not buy a car? Any of those big decisions, especially in your 20s, because they were the first time you had to decide whether, am I going to sign my name on the dotted line and know I have a car payment for the next so many months? They were really big decisions at that point in time. Should I stick with this career choice in college? Is it going to bring me happiness? Is it going to bring me fulfillment? Is it going to bring me financial security? Those big decisions that you face in your early adulthood are great big decisions, and they seem like they will be so long lasting. If I pick the wrong career, the rest of my life is over. It just but so I think there was some of that kind of fear and trepidation, the anxiousness of, I remember when I got the call and they said, we've selected you to go to Thailand to do this grant, fulfill this grant for the next 2 years. And I'm like, score, I don't have to job interview. Great, I'm done. Good deal. Let's, and all my friends that were graduating college that spring, they were like, oh, we haven't found a job. We don't know what we're going to be doing in the fall. I'm like, I know where I'm going to be. I already made that decision. So it felt like a relief, because I'm very capable of being happy anywhere or doing anything. And once the decision's made, then I just like, okay, let's go with it. The decision's made. We have to make it the best it can be. So move on. And I think when you face those decisions, that's when it's difficult. And it left feelings of anxiety and fear that you might make a mistake or make the wrong choice. And then, how would that affect your lifelong goals or your aspirations?
How would you compare your childhood or teenage years to today's kids?
I think as I look back, it's the fact that my childhood was a while ago, that it seems like it was the ideal childhood. We lived out in the country. I had pets. We had a garden. I had chores to do, but they weren't difficult. I had great parents that were very supportive and made sure I got to do all kinds of things. I can remember, especially since we've been cleaning the farm, getting it ready to sell, and going through cupboards and storage places. And my mom, we found a whole box of old books, and my mom's like, well, what should we do with these? And she goes, I don't know. Has anybody read him? I'm like, oh yeah, I can remember summer afternoons laying up here with a quilt on the floor, just reading for hours at a time. It was fun and enjoyable. Now reading a book's a treat, because there's always laundry to do, or one of your children needs something, or my husband needs help, or whatever. It's like those free moments are farther and farther apart. I had lots of fun. I can remember fishing in the creek and floating the inner tube down the irrigation canals. I can remember getting up early and having to go out and weed the garden and pick raspberries to take to town to sell. And I'm sure at the time I complained and moaned and thought I was very overworked. But as you look back at it, those have very tender memories. And it is a good time in my life that I think about and remember fondly. So I thought I had an ideal childhood. When I look at some of the kids now, we had a party phone, which meant there were 6 families on our phone. So you couldn't just call. You had to wait, and if the neighbor lady wanted to use the phone, she'd tell you to get off the phone and you had to hang up, and she would make a phone call, or vice versa. And so, now kids have their own cell phones and they talk all the time. And is that good or bad? I don't know. It's just the way it is. And so it's much different than the childhood that I grew up with. Yeah. My brother in high school had a girlfriend, And she would call, and he'd give me the phone because he wanted to watch Monday Night Football, and the phone was hooked to the wall. It only had a short cord, and we had a TV in the house, so he'd go in and watch the TV, and then pretty soon I'd be waving at him, come over here, you got to answer this. I can't fake, you can kind of grunt and and she thought she was talking to David, but it really wasn't. We laugh hard about some of the things we did growing up. And, we had milk cows, and we would turn the station to rock and roll and make it really loud, and the cows would just let their milk out really fast. And my dad always turned it to the country music station very slow and quiet, and the cows would take forever to milk. And it was like, oh no, let's get this done. We got places to be tonight. So we'd crank up the radio, and the cows would, I think, in just pure shock, get rid of their milk. And we'd be done in a hurry so we could go to town and to the football game or whatever we thought we needed to do. So, it's just a different world. We all grew up in a little bit different world, even though it was a great time. And I remember when my children's childhood, I hope we gave them some of those same memories, fishing and chasing frogs at night with flashlights and all the good things that people need to know when they before they reach adulthood. So,
what brings you peace or calmness during hard times?
The easiest way for me is to rely on the Lord. Realize all the blessings that I do have, count your blessings, look at the things that are good in your life, realize that it may be a difficult time right now, or I may be cranky, or I may be upset with something, but know that it too shall pass, and that there's so much good things in my life. My children are healthy. We're all gainfully employed. None of our family members have gotten sick with the COVID pandemic virus. And so, we have plenty of food to eat. I have a dog. My little ugly dog loves me. And nobody else likes her, but I love her. And so, simple things. I have beautiful flowers in my front yard, and I like to go out in the evening and watch the sunset and say, today was a good day. I did some good things for others. I did some good in the world. It was a productive day for me. I have peace as the night comes on, and I think that sense of well-being brings me great happiness. And if it's a bad day and I think, boy, I shouldn't have done that, and I'm cranky about this, and I'm mad about this, and I think, well, tomorrow's a new day. Better get a new attitude adjustment. Look at the good that can occur in life and make tomorrow a better day.
Wasn't that awesome? And one of the things that I loved about this interview is how she talked about her traveling experiences and how people operate the same way. People are the same everywhere you go, but we all have different living circumstances. And I liked how she phrased it as we all live in a different world, or we all grow up in a different world. And how true is that? And that's one of the reasons why I love these interviews so much, is because I get to hear about these different worlds that these people grow up in, and their childhoods or their younger years, and the big decisions they made, or the crazy decisions they made, or the fun things they did, and how different the era was and how different their world was from ours. And I also like how she focused on being able to enjoy the current time period that you're in, and how each generation or period in time has something to offer to us, and we can enjoy each day and be excited about the future and just take in how we're living and what we're doing and what new opportunities we have and what technological improvements we have, and take advantage of them and use them for good. A lot of those things are just wholesome activities, or activities that make life enjoyable. It's what we're doing in the present that keeps us happy. Looking towards the future makes us hopeful. Looking back at the past and remembering the good times makes us feel grateful. And with that, I will talk with you next week. We're going to have our last episode. It's the 80s recap. And with that, I am really excited to talk with you next week. Have a good week until then. Wait. You can't miss the embarrassing story of the week. No. Okay. It's that time. It's Steph with an F's embarrassing story of the week. Okay, so this week's embarrassing story could be a number of things. It could be the time when my kid got sick on his birthday and the poor kid was just not feeling well. And so he slept with his dad while I slept on the couch. And then whenever he would get too hot, he had a little bit of a fever. And whenever he would get too hot, he would come downstairs. But the embarrassing part is that he was hanging out with me in the middle of the night while we were trying to get his temperature down just a bit and pushing the Gatorade through and pushing the medicines through. And he just upchucked all over me and my blanket and the couch and my entire bedding situation. So since I am quite pregnant, I didn't do much about it and just got a new blanket, wiped off as much puke as I could, and we all fell asleep that night. So that's one. The other embarrassing thing is that I continue to trip 24/7. I have to catch myself all the time because I have tripped. I just trip all the time. And I'm excited to chat with you next week for our 80s recap. We'll talk to you then. Bye.
If you came here for mental health help, please go visit your doctor. If you're looking for some mental health tips, Dr. Daniel Amen is someone I follow. I love what he has to say and offer. I think his website is brainhealthassessment.com, and he just has some awesome checklist items that go over brain health habits that you should be doing to have better brain health. I want to say there's like 5 to 10 items, and if you have those, if you're working on those habits and trying to improve them to improve your brain health, you'll also improve your happiness level, because brain health equals mental health. So keep your brains happy and healthy, and check out Dr. Daniel Amen. This is not sponsored. I just really like what he has to say, and I think it's really beneficial. I think it can help a lot of people. It's actually very matter of fact, kind of obvious, but yeah, we neglect so many of these habits daily. And I do feel like, if you're feeling unhappy, that may be one of the reasons you're unhappy, because you're neglecting your brain health, which is also your mental health. And yeah, trying to improve these habits could really help. So check him out. If you have any stories from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, please get in contact with me. Let's chat. I want nothing more than to chat about the past. I want nothing more than to chat about the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. If you have any specific questions that I'm not asking that you would like to know about these eras while interviewing these people, please let me know. I would love some advice, and I would love your input. So what would you guys like to know?